Welcome to Tutorial 5 in this MultilingProfiler series, the fourth tutorial focused on frequency profiling. If you haven't already watched tutorials 2, 3, and 4 on frequency bands, word counting units, and adapting Flemmas, I'd recommend reviewing those first, as we'll be building on some of the ideas they cover here. So far, we've seen how MultilingProfiler uses lists of the 5,000 most common words in French, German, and Spanish to profile texts, and how it usually counts these words using a unit called a flemma. Flemmas group together all the grammatical forms of a word, but don't include its derived forms, so words created by adding prefixes or suffixes. If your learners are noticing affix patterns, or you're explicitly teaching derivational morphology, then including derived forms in your profile can give you a more accurate picture of how accessible a text really is. In this tutorial, we'll look at how to switch from flemmas to word families, and how you can selectively include just the affixes that align with your goals. Today I'll be profiling a short French article from technoscience.net. It's on tourism, and at first glance, seems to use relatively accessible vocabulary. To find out how suitable it is for use with low intermediate learners, I'm going to run it past the 2,000 word frequency list, which is roughly aligned with CEFR A2. Okay, so the initial result is 84.5% coverage, which means that just over 15% of the words in this article aren't in the A2 aligned list. However, if we take a closer look at the orange highlighted words, so those that are not in the top 2,000, we can see that many of them are transparent topic nouns that are very similar to their English equivalents. Assuming this is a reading activity, and not a listening one, I'll go ahead and add those words to the extended list, since learners are generally better at recognising cognates in writing than in speech. If you're not sure how to use the extended list feature, check out tutorial 8 where you'll find a full walkthrough. After adding those items, coverage jumps up to 90.8%. That's a decent level. It's within the range where learners should be able to get the general gist of the text, as we discussed in tutorial 2. Interestingly, if we look at the orange words that are left, a lot of them look familiar as well. That's probably because they're derived forms of words that are already on the A2 list. For example, utilisateur, user, from utiliser, to use, and traditionnellement, traditionally, from traditionnel, traditional. Those derived words aren't counted in the base list, but if your learners know the suffixes heure and ment, the words might not actually be too difficult for them. In this case, using the flemma as the word counting unit might actually be underestimating how much of the text your learners can understand. So let's see what happens when we switch from the flemma view to the word family view. To do this, just go to the Add Derived Forms dropdown and choose Select All. You'll see that there are 6 affixes listed here. Of course, French has many more affixes than just 6, but for now, MultilingProfiler only includes the most frequent, regular, and transparent ones. In other words, the ones most likely to be relevant to beginner and low intermediate learners, based on current UK curriculum policy. Each affix comes with a short explanation of what it covers. For example, the un prefix, which means not, is included here, but the il spelling variant of the same affix is not, because that one's much rarer. You'll also see which parts of speech each affix applies to. So even though you can technically add un to some verbs in French, that pattern isn't included because it's relatively rare and less likely to be useful to most learners than the more common uses with adjectives or adverbs. With all the affixes selected, our coverage increases by another 2%, including 4 more words, utilisateur, traditionnellement, adaptable, and préparation, all derived from base words already in the list of 2000, utiliser, traditionnel, adapté, and préparé. Now, you might decide that some of these affixes are more familiar to your learners than others, or maybe you're going to focus on just a few of them in your lesson. If that's the case, you can create a partial word family by selecting only the affixes that match your learning goals. For example, English-speaking learners might already be comfortable with the am prefix and the able and ation suffixes because they work pretty much the same way in English: impossible, learnable, preparation. Other affixes that are less transparent, like mon, the ordinal numbers, and ateur, might need some more focused teaching or practice. And don't forget, you can combine this affix filtering technique with the grammatical filtering that we explored in tutorial 4. If you're working with low intermediate learners, you might want to deselect more advanced verb forms, like the subjunctive or the imperfect subjunctive, and tweak your text to keep things as accessible as possible. To learn more about the research behind this feature, and why raising morphological awareness, explicitly teaching affixes, and introducing them in stages can support vocabulary development, check out the short summaries below, all available in the OASIS database. In the next tutorial, we'll look at profiling with a different type of list, a curriculum list aligned with specifications for high-stakes exams in English secondary schools.